It's that time of year again, folks. If we do not feed them, they will fall on their face and die. So what I've got here is some 1-to-1 sugar syrup that I mixed up the other day. In this batch, there is no additives. And what I mean by that, there is no lemongrass, there is no spearmint, there is no Pro Health or Honeybee Healthy. Straight sugar water, 1-to-1 mixture. What I've got over here is a couple jar feeders, which I will be sticking these two particular jar feeders on Stan and Sue. You can see I've already added boxes, an empty box. Stan's not really growing as quick as Sue, so the reason Sue's a little taller is the bees are actually using both of the painted boxes that I painted up for Sue. Right here is the inner cover, which has a round hole in the middle for a jar feeder. That's the reason for the top box. It's basically just to protect it from the sun and to keep robbing down from the feeder. Stan, on the other hand, not growing quite as quick as I said, so there's an inner cover here and a hole in the center of that for a jar feeder. So that's where the jar feeders will be going. The other hives I'll be feeding this morning have frame feeders. If you're not familiar with frame feeders, also called division board feeders, they look like this. And there's several different styles of them. I've actually got a video where I've updated these to make them so there wasn't quite as much drowning. And the way I did that was a simple float. It's basically looks like a paint stick, really. Just a real thin board with some holes drilled in it, and it's actually the dimensions of the bottom of the feeder, because if you take your width and length from the top, it's not going to float, or it's not going to settle all the way down to the bottom as the fluid drops. So that's what the rest of the colonies have that I'll be feeding this morning. And I've got one other new feeder that just came this week, actually from a subscriber. He sent me this feeder along with a Pro Nuke to do a review on. It's kind of late in the year to be using the Pro Nuke, so I thought I'd go ahead and step up and try out the feed can. And this is made by feedcans.com. Never heard of them, but I tell you, this is some super stout plastic, very thick, and it's also has UV protected in it. Usually when you see black plastic, it's got some sort of UV protection. So you can see it's only got 3 holes at the top. I've only got it about half full because I want this syrup to give a little bit to everybody here in the bee yard. I've also got an open feeder set up. You might be able to see it right through there. You see that bucket behind the car? Now that has lemongrass oil in it. And the reason I put it in there versus here is I want them to smell that and not what's in each colony. So in my mind, and it's worked out for me very well in the past, set up an open feeder 80, 100 yards away, put some additives in it, some kind of scents, essential oils. I use lemongrass oil. Actually, it's right here, lemongrass oil. And the reason I have it with me is because if there's any left, I'm going to add it to that bucket feeder. But I'll set up a bucket feeder 80, 100 yards away with some scent added to it. And any bees out flying around looking to stir up trouble and start robbing is going to smell that and not this that I'm putting in each one of these colonies. So that's my thought there. So what I'm going to do is get my smoker going. I'm going to do a little time lapse on me going through here, adding food to each one of these, and hopefully be able to beat the sun before it comes up over them trees, because it's getting hot already. So here we go. So my plan is to use the feed can on the swarm I caught last week. If you haven't seen that video, I'll link it up here in the right hand corner and you can check it out. Did an inspection this week. There is a mated queen in that colony. So the virgin stayed. The original queen left. But I'll tell you, the population wasn't near what it looked like on the tree. So I'm kind of believing that majority of the bees went back to the nuke. When I inspected it the other day, there was only 3 frames of bees. But I went through that nuke. Look at this. So I'm doing a quick inspection on the nuke that swarmed. If you remember, it was 2 deeps and a medium. Well, look how full the bottom deep is. It's packed with bees. Here's the second box. Loaded with bees. See all them little eyes sticking out between them frames? Every frame's that way. Here's the medium that was on top. Packed with honey. Ready to extract, probably. But I'm gonna let them keep it. Extremely healthy still. I haven't went through and seen any queen cells yet, but I imagine there's one in here somewhere. But they're doing really well. Really, really well. I'm surprised at how many's still left in here. So you can see the nuke is loaded with bees, as were the swarm capture 3 frames. So what do you think? You think the bees went back? That's what it appears to me. Anyway, let me get this feed can on. I got a lot of feeding to do before the sun gets up. Now let's get the rest of these done and time lapse before the sun comes up. So I'm pulling out all the stops on this one, folks. Here is a Ceracell nuke feeder. It goes on top of your colony. You don't even actually have to interfere with the bees. You take the top cover off, fill up your feeder, put the top cover back on, don't even need your smoker. Did videos on this in the past, but the way it works is usually your colony is tilted one direction or the other. You put these in with these plastic corners facing the way that it's leaning. Mine's leaning forward, so putting these in the front is where I want them. The way it works is the bees can come in from the inside, up and over the corner, and then down in to wherever the level of the SERP is. Absolutely no drowning with these feeders. Okay, so I've got that done. Everybody's been fed now. There was a couple that are doing quite well without feeders. That nuke right there being one of them. So they don't have one. There's a couple other ones in here. I'm not sure if you've seen, but on this colony, I didn't really want, there's really no need to add the second box yet. So what I did was I poured some syrup directly in some drawled comb and then shook the frame off over the bucket to get any loose syrup that would drip back into the bucket so I wouldn't make a mess. Then I put the frame back in the colony. That should do just fine. Now what I want to do is I want to get rid of this measuring cup. I'm going to add a little bit of lemongrass to this, and we're going to take it up there and put it in that bucket. Just a little bit. That looks good. Now I'll use my hive tool and emulsify this and stir it up for a few minutes. Alright, let's go pour this in that feeder. Come on, Ladybug. And my helper with me today, this morning. This bucket's been quite the happening place the last couple days. The problem is, this particular bucket I got, the holes are too high and all the syrup doesn't drain out. So, what you've got here is a 5-gallon bucket, and it's got this rim, which you see here on this bucket. It goes around. If you turn the bucket upside down, these actually work perfect as little troughs to hold syrup. So from the inside of the bucket, what I've done is drilled holes coming out, but only into here, not all the way through this lip. So there's a hole here, there's a hole in here, a hole in here, and it's like that. Every one of them's got a hole. I don't know if you can see that hole right there, and that one. So then you gotta flip the bucket upside down, obviously, and then these start to fill. So to fill the bucket, what I'm gonna have to do is turn it right side up. Like so. Take the lid off. Pour in our new syrup. And we got a couple bees. That one's dead, so I'm not gonna worry about it. Put the lid back on there for more of them to get in. Snap the lid on, make sure it's sealed all the way around. Then you re-invert it. Wham! Now watch. You see the syrup leaking in each one of those compartments? That's the bad thing about it, is if syrup gets in there and it's in any sun, you'll get a little bit of mildew. But bleach will clean that right up. Now all these little compartments, all the way around the bucket, are filling up. Plenty of places for bees to drink. And then what I'll also do is take any syrup left, put on top of the bucket. That'll draw all the robbers over here. Then I'm going to lay this bucket here on its side after I get most of the loose syrup. I don't want anybody drowning in the bucket. Alright, we'll lay the bucket like that, the feeder like that, and I'll show you what this looks like in a couple hours. Okay, so it's about 1 o'clock in the afternoon now, and as you can see, the bees are feasting. All the way around. I didn't mention earlier, but when you drill your holes in your buckets for these little troughs, you don't want to drill a hole in the 2 sections that the handle goes through, being this section and the one on the other side, because obviously it would leak out. Okay, so real quick, let's walk over to the bee yard and see if we notice any robbing activity. Definitely some going on here. And this is the hive that I poured syrup directly into one of the combs. And the reason I can tell there's robbing is there's bees trying to figure out how to work that guardian entrance. The ones that are confused, that don't know, those are your robbers. The ones that actually live here, you see, they know how to work that entrance. They've did it hundreds of times. Let's walk down here. Yeah, there's no way, no doubt. I definitely think there's a little bit of robbing still occurring. Not bad though, I guess. I'm not noticing any robbing here. This looks like normal activity on Sue. Yeah, normal on Stan. Now, seems kind of vigorous here, but I did reduce down all of these wheels to make them really small and easy to defend. Let me move in here so you can see. So maybe there isn't any robbing. Let's walk on back here. No, it looks pretty good. That looks pretty good. Right over here. Now, I added that box this morning, the top box, so I can see where they're probably smelling the inside of the hive. They're trying to figure out why they can't enter there. Need to scooch that top box forward a little bit. I'm not so sure that that's robbing either. So it looks like having that feeder up there did do something. So what do you think, folks? You feeding your bees? If not, I strongly suggest you get in your hives and you take a peek and see if it's time to feed. A good way to tell if you need to feed your bees is to check your brood frames. Look around the top outside edge and see if you see a nice band of nectar going around. If your brood frames don't have any nectar on them, I strongly suggest you get some feed in there. This time of year, we just aren't getting the rains that we got back in spring, so the flowers that we do have just aren't producing much nectar. Now, there are some plants out there still in bloom. As you can see behind me, you can see the cone flowers. You can also see that tall stuff, which is wing stem. Some other plants that would be producing nectar right now would be ironweed, Joe Pye weed, and there is still a little bit of clover. So if you don't know those plants I just mentioned, go over to Google and do a search on them. It might help teach you what they look like, and you'll be able to see if you have any of them in your area. So get the feed on, people. Check your hives, see if they need fed. I got one more thing I'd like to talk to you before we sign out today, and that is Ladybug. Look at her. You know, this week we had an anniversary with Ladybug. We've had her 1 year. And on that date, since we don't actually know her birthday, we're calling that her birthday. So she's 4 now. Hey, grazer. So if you remember back a year ago, and you've been following me for that long, we lost our pit bull, Angus, who we had for his whole life. 14 years, and we debated for a long time on whether to get another dog, but gosh, I'm so glad we did. Ladybug has been a joy to have in our household. She is such a good dog, folks. Hardly ever barks, and that's just a feature of American bullies. They just don't bark a whole lot. She's been very good with all of our birds and animals and everything we have here at the house. Haven't you, Ladybug? She doesn't mind the duckies, which are right over here this morning. She doesn't mind the chickens. She doesn't mind the goats. She doesn't mind the cows. She's just such a sweetheart. Very glad to have you in our family, Ladybugs. Look up here, girl. Look up here. Look up here, girl. Oh, look at that sweet little face. We love you, Ladybug. I think we're going to keep you, girl. You hang around. He's a good beekeeper and a good partner to have in the family. So that's all I got to say this week, folks. If you haven't seen Ladybug before, this is her, and we're very proud to have her in the family. It was very, very neat to have her, since I've been doing all these videos and sharing her in every video, or she's in the background exploring. It was really neat this year when I was selling nukes and all the customers showing up, and as soon as they get out of the vehicle, they're like, "There's Ladybug." So it was pretty neat for them to all know her name. So that's going to conclude this week's video, folks. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below, and I'll be glad to do my best to answer them for you. If you haven't subscribed, please take a minute to do so, and make sure you click on that little bell so you can get notified when I release new videos. And hey, if you enjoyed this, it doesn't cost nothing. Throw me a big thumbs up. Thanks. We'll see you next week, folks. And next week, I'll give an update on the sumac treatment and what my findings are to this point. So if that's something you're interested in, it's another reason to subscribe. Thanks.